Yeah, my name's Ross Cessna. I grew up in this area, and it was apparent from an early age that I was a little bit different, I would say. Um, I started, my story really starts when I was in the hospital a lot for allergies and stuff like that. I was sick often. I had asthma, so I was in the hospital frequently. That kind of really shaped a lot of my perception of the medical industry and stuff like that, even later on in life, which was like a fear of that kind of stuff. My aunt committed suicide when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I can remember like walking on this sheet of ice and thinking, when I die, it's going to be cold and black, and I'm going to float alone to infinity or whatever. So that's not what a typical 5 or 6 year old thinks about. I think so. It was looking back, it was obvious then how different I was. My parents divorced when I was in second grade, and my dad remarried when I was in fourth grade. And I can remember shortly after they remarried, running away at one point to this field by the side of my house in February. And there was this little box, and I got a little rug and put it over the box to prevent the wind from blowing in on the sides. And I got like a little pot, so I had a pot to go to the bathroom in, kind of like that little like saying. I stayed out there for about 2 hours. And I went in when I was probably on the brink of hypothermia. And that like external running away eventually kind of became an internal running away in lots of ways. I had a lot of attention when I was sick often when I was a kid. And after my parents divorced, my mom had to work and go to school to try to be able to support kids and all that stuff. And my dad focused his attention on my stepmother, her family, and then he worked 2 jobs. He was a school teacher and he worked at the turnpike. So there wasn't really a lot of connection with them, I would say. They both did their best, and I have no animosity towards them. I could never really probably do all those things and still keep it together. So I have a lot of respect for them, but growing up, you don't really understand all that stuff, I would say. And I felt really neglected and like I wasn't important, and I didn't have that attention, so I started reaching out for attention in negative ways. Summer of fifth grade going into sixth grade, I kind of started vandalizing stuff because I wasn't able to sleep. Not sleeping and having difficulty sleeping is something that's plagued me most of my life up until within the past year or so. And so I went out and vandalized stuff in my neighborhood, and then I got in trouble with the police a couple months later because I was put on wire by a neighborhood kid who got blamed for it, of me admitting it. So I got the attention that I wanted, but it obviously wasn't good attention. And that experience kind of shaped my opinion of authority figures too, because it was kind of, they pulled me out of class in school for something that had happened outside of school. And intelligence is one of my downfalls in lots of ways. I'm not the smartest, but I'm definitely not the most foolish. But looking at that from a intellectual perspective, how could they pull me out for something that wasn't there? Kind of dissolved that boundary of trust with police officers. I started reaching out I think I smoked pot the first time in seventh grade, and then first time I ever really drank alcohol, freshman year, I blacked out. I slept behind Ames, middle of February. Again, there's this like reoccurring thing with February. Underneath a mattress covered in broken glass and mud. And that was so fun that I continued to drink, and blacking out was like this reoccurring thing for me. I had gone to a mental health doctor, I want to say sophomore or junior year, and they had diagnosed me as bipolar, and they had given me medication. I didn't like the way the medication made me feel. Excuse me. So I stopped taking it. So I was really self-medicating a lot with the pot and the alcohol. Eventually, my dad found my weed, and he put me into rehab for it. I kind of jumped through the hoops, got through rehab. And again, it's one of those things that didn't make sense. I got caught for pot, but they put me in AA. Like the rehab that I went to wanted me to go to AA meetings. And at that age, I'm like, I don't have a problem with drinking, even though most people don't normally black out and sleep behind a department store in the winter the first time that they drink. But in my divine wisdom, I thought that was the typical experience because it was so fun. So after I completed that rehab, I was in my senior year around this time, and I got pulled out of class for pot, and then I got put in the drug court program. Now, that was supposed to last me about 9 months, and it lasted me a year and a half because I could not quit from smoking weed. I didn't want to because, for me, the only problem I encountered with it, and this is, again, my divine intellect making things difficult for me, and I say divine intellect humorously, I don't say it seriously. But I was like, well, the only trouble I've had with this is them arresting me for it and putting me in this trouble. Like, how can this be bad for me? Because for me, it helped manage all those problems that I had, feeling uncomfortable, feeling anxious, not liking myself, not feeling comfortable around people. Because I never felt like I fit in anywhere. And as I went through that experience with the drug court program, all my friends that I hung out with kind of fell to the wayside. They stopped wanting to hang out with me because they all still wanted to party. Nobody wants to hang out with the person who has to wear a house arrest bracelet occasionally and all this kind of stuff. Kind of like the buzzkill. So that lasted longer than it should have. I was put in the Juvenile Justice Center 3 different times just for dirty urine. One time I was actually taking college classes at YSU because I had graduated high school, but because I was in the juvenile program, they still put me in the Juvenile Detention Center. So it kind of took me out of college, which, again, didn't make sense to me. Here I am trying to better myself, move forward, and this happens. I had been dating a woman from junior year on and off. Her and I kept breaking up more and more, and the way that I really started to deal with romantic issues was just get really drunk or really stoned, run away from it. Eventually, one of the times when her and I were broken up, I started going to culinary school, used that as a way to get a degree, moved out of the area because her and I kind of had this final falling out. So then again, that internal running away became external in the sense that everything in the city, when I looked around, it reminded me of her, and it tore me apart. Because I just didn't know how to process things, because I took it as I'm horrible, like I'm the worst person ever. And anything that happened to me, it was always about me not being good enough, not being this enough, or it was these people are out to get me. Because that's what my experiences had led me to believe. Vegas is a horrible place for somebody with an addictive personality. And I heard a lot of women out there. I heard a lot of women before that, too, on the ins and outs with that girlfriend. That's another part of my story that is kind of a continuing thread, is how I treated women because of how I felt inside, and then treating them in a way that made me feel powerful or feel important or whatever it was. I kind of used them like drugs and alcohol, where I would use them, get my fill, and then just throw them aside like an empty beer can or whatever, which is a horrible way to treat people. I believe in karma, and I feel that I've got my karmic return for all that stuff. So, but yeah, Vegas was a big horror show in lots of ways. A woman that I had met out here back here before moving out, after the ex and I, my first significant girlfriend, had broken up. She eventually moved out there with me. And again, it was just this tumultuous relationship, ins and outs. Later on, I came to find out that she had a similar diagnosis as me as well, so that was really a pleasant relationship, I'm sure, to witness for people. After that, kind of fell apart, left Vegas, Washington, just traveled around a lot. I ended up homeless lots of different times because I wouldn't want to play the game, and I had this belief that the universe has my back no matter what. Which I still believe that that's true, but not when I put myself in really stupid situations. So that whole pattern of police, women, drugs, alcohol, it just kind of repeats itself. It comes to a head in California, 2012. California in 2012, April of that year, I had no February of that year, I had started dating a woman I had met out there. She was the one like the other ones that I had met before. Her and I decided to stop drinking together, which it was a good decision. But the issue was I hadn't dealt with everything else inside of me, which is why I drank, and I was still smoking weed. So life became progressively more unmanageable without the drinking, because the drinking kind of kept everything in line, as crazy as that sounds. But there came a point where I stopped being able to, I wasn't able to sleep, I wasn't eating, and this went on for a couple nights, and then my thoughts started getting really weird. Like, these people are out to get me, there's this van over there is watching me. And then it progressively got worse because I was smoking copious amounts of weed, because I was in part of the Emerald Triangle where they grow a lot of weed there. That's their biggest economic commodity in that area is weed. So that kind of progressively got worse. I ended up getting picked up by the police. When they picked me up, I thought that one was a representative of light and one was a representative of dark, like the ultimate polarity of good cop, bad cop. And I thought that they were shifting between, like, looking at each other. I thought when they were taking me to the psych ward, they were taking me to this place where it would kind of be like a shipping station to get me to the place where the regular people were, because I couldn't understand how people could be so cruel, so mean, so violent. A lot of the things, I was never violent, but cruel and mean I definitely was to people. Unintentionally, sometimes intentionally. I just couldn't understand how the world was the way that it was. That experience of going to the psych ward was very traumatic for me, for lots of different reasons. I don't have time to get into all the nuances of psychosis, but anybody here that's experienced it can kind of understand how deep it can get sometimes, where everything's connected. So that was difficult. My mom came out to California to kind of piece my mind back together. The job I had been working kind of fell apart. The relationship fell apart. I didn't want to be around any of my friends because there was still a lot of paranoia there. After your whole worldview melts into this chaotic conspiracy theory thing, it's kind of hard just to be like, life's normal. Like, I'm just going to go back and get back to doing the day-to-day. So eventually I ended up moving back here. When I was out there, they had diagnosed me with bipolar 1. They had given me medication for it. Moving back here, I eventually stopped taking the medication, started working again. In kitchen work, there's a substantial amount of drugs and alcohol. So I was right back in my element. One of the things that I kind of forgot is I had gotten a couple DUIs in my past. And I ended up getting a third DUI here when I was working and starting to get back into drinking and all that stuff. Eventually, I quit the job that I had gotten right before that DUI, just because the stress, having to get rides there, all this stuff was becoming too much for me. I couldn't afford pot. I got a bunch of legal herbs, and using that divine intellect again, reduced all these legal herbs that had these relaxing properties into like their utmost essence, and then took that. Needless to say, the end result of that was about psychosis for the better part of a year. I'm not a religious person. I'm very spiritual, but there was elements of the devil, like God, like all this stuff that is culturally imposed in lots of ways. And I'm not minimizing anybody else's belief, but it's there for. It's kind of projected on everybody anyhow, even if you believe that stuff or not. And there was this progressively weirder things. Like I thought that people were recording me through my walls. I thought that I was on a TV show for celebrities because my life was so exciting. Like I thought that my life was so mundane that they thought that that was entertaining because they didn't know how to live like a normal life. Just all sorts of out there stuff. Eventually, the psychosis kind of led me to this point where I was in DUI school because I had to take that to work towards getting my license back. And the point there was kind of like it was guiding me towards going the right way with things. Like it was almost like a psychotic scared straight program where it was like, you can't be doing this anymore. And I really stepped away from drinking largely after that. And it didn't really work once I started taking the medication. Like the medication I was on, it didn't jive with it. So I stepped away from that. I kept smoking weed though. And I got better than what I was, but I just wasn't better. So that would have been around 2014. 2015 or so, I met a woman, and she was like the first friend that I had really made since I had moved back and since after all my psychosis and stuff like that. She had a history of mental health things, so she could kind of understand. And just having somebody that could understand all that stuff and relate to that really made me feel connected. Unfortunately, because she had her own things, her and I kind of lost connection for a while. I went back to a job, kitchen work. I just can't do it anymore because of the education I have. I didn't know it then. There's no way I can get paid for the education that I have and the skills that I have locally, what I should be worth. And with being somewhat egotistical, I am working on it. But with being somewhat egotistical and stuff, nobody knows how to do anything, right? I know everything. So that was a big barrier for me too. So I ended up quitting that job, and I just kind of sitting in my mom's basement, waiting to get disability for my mental health stuff. Even though the doctor that I had seen here, he had told me a couple years prior that it was drug-induced psychosis, not bipolar. I didn't want to believe that because I had been doing stuff for bipolar and it had worked for me. And pot could never do that to me because I know everything about pot from being one person who smoked it. I know way more than a doctor who's done this for 30 or 40 years of his life. Eventually, after I didn't get the disability thing, I started to kind of evaluate that. Like, maybe I should step away from it. Maybe I should step away from it to get a job and see what it's like. That woman from the summer before kind of came back into my life again. And without the alcohol, which it hadn't been there before, but without the alcohol and enough time to develop more a little bit and gain more confidence in myself, I had feelings for her, and we tried to work towards something. But then I started to notice behavioral patterns of how I acted towards women. And one of the things they say I'm in a 12-step program. One of the things they say is when you start using, you emotionally stay that age. So I was still emotionally like 12 or 13, trying to have a relationship at I was 32 then, and I was like, holy crap, like this is embarrassing that I'm acting like this. So her and I kind of fell out of contact yet again, and I had taken it upon myself to kind of get into a 12-step program, not for her, but so I didn't treat other people like this, and so I could try to get my life back together. Around that time is when I started volunteering for NAMI. And one of the things is, prior to really stepping into that arena, I used my mental illness as kind of like an escape route for everything. I can't do this. I have anxiety. I'm depressed. I can't do this. And I understand that there are certain positions where that is a valid thing, but it became my fallback for everything. I really, when I started recovery, I really had to, there's a thing they say in 12-step programs, it's easy, all you have to do is change everything. And
that's not easy.
That's what I had to do. I mean, for me, it became easier to change everything than to live how I was living because I was miserable no matter what I would do. Even if I was happy, it was still like a lower grade of misery. And I used to want everybody to try to understand me, but I would never try to understand everybody else. I would never try to change my perspective. I wanted to change the way that the world viewed me, which if you think about that logically, that's a hell of a task to take on. It's a lot easier for me to get comfortable in my own head and change the way that I perceive everything. But the thing that was difficult there is taking responsibility for myself and responsibility for my own happiness, facing my fears. One of my biggest fears was always, what are people going to think of me? What if they don't like me? What if? And the conclusion that I've came to is people aren't going to like me. Not everybody is going to like me. Not everybody is going to agree with me. Not everybody is going to think that I'm this swell person. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. What matters is what I think of me. And if I like me, and if I think that I'm doing the right thing, and I can get up every day and say, you tried your hardest, you did your best, you did this, and what I tell myself, that's what matters. Because not everybody is going to get me. I don't get everybody. I don't want to try to understand everybody. And with my experience, I have gained a lot of empathy for people, even people that I disagree with, and I can understand their perspective. Or I can assume I understand their perspective, I should say, because I don't know that I can. But yeah, the things that have helped me really get through everything was putting down the drugs and alcohol, which sounds obvious to people that are never involved in those things, I think. But to people that utilize those things, it's probably one of the harder things to do. I started eating healthier, developed a sleeping routine, exercising, meditation, yoga, mindfulness, art. Art's so crucial for me because it's nonverbal communication, so it's like a journal, but I can still put out all those different ideas. And I used to be so self-critical of art, and that's a good practice in getting over perfectionism, because I struggled from that too, where I'd want everything to be perfect. This isn't good enough, even though I would do my best. So now it's kind of like everything's a process to me. No matter what it is, I did one painting, it's the process of art. So that painting isn't that good. What don't I like about it? And I try to take that approach to everything. And making all those changes slowly, because I would try to make those kind of changes in my life before, but I would try to do them all at once. Like I'd go from 0 to 60, and then I'd wonder why I end up crashing and burning. And it's like, well, nothing really works that way. I came up with this concept of the philosophy of natural change. And if you look at big changes in nature, they're very violent typically, like a tornado, a hurricane, all that stuff. But if you look at gradual changes over time, water through like the Grand Canyon, that was a river, and it eroded into this beautiful canyon. Most natural changes that occur slowly are good ones. The sudden ones tend to be violent and chaotic. So doing that really helped me. I just celebrated 8 months free of drugs and alcohol. They took me off my medication because they said that I was drug-induced psychosis, and that I'm at a position now where I don't need it because I'm the ideal patient, because I do what I need to do. I'm not perfect. I still have quips. I still have things that I have to overcome. And my goal isn't to be perfect. It's to be better, to be healthier, to be happier. One of the things that helped me too, getting more comfortable about myself, is being able to share about my experiences truthfully without putting any polish on it. Because it was very difficult for me originally to be like, I was psychotic. I believed all this stuff that wasn't real, because that's not easy for people to really say. One of the concepts in a 12-step program is kind of getting all that stuff, all those resentments, all that fear, all that stuff inside of you out that's holding you back. And I really recommend that to anybody, because I saw this thing, and it was this woman talking about holding a glass of water, and she's like, how heavy is this glass of water? And people guess, and she's like, how heavy it is isn't really important. It's a matter of how long you hold it. So a lot of that stuff, it could be things that you've held from your childhood that now they might seem insignificant, but they weigh you down a lot because you've been holding it forever. And learning to let go of that stuff and make peace with it has been incredibly powerful. Learning to let go of resentments towards other people has been incredibly powerful. And granted, I haven't lived everybody's experiences. Some people's experiences may be harder for them to let go of their resentment. But the thing for me is none of my resentment served anything. That past has already happened. All I'm going to do is relive it, and holding on to that anger doesn't do anything for me, or that sadness. There's a quote, and I've seen it attributed to Buddha, and I want to say Nelson Mandela as well, which is, there's a big difference. Anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And just like resentments are, or anything like that. So the thing that helped me is liberating myself from everything and stepping away from my diagnosis. I still treat myself like I have bipolar, which is eating healthy, nutritious, whole foods, sleep schedule, all that stuff. Because if I do have it, I'm still treating myself for it. If I don't, those are good principles to instill in my life anyhow. I think one of the things for me that was really difficult is having a label on a condition and then not expecting to get stigmatized for it, because there's stigma associated with whatever condition it is prior to you even taking on that label. So when you identify with this label that you're given, which I won't get into that little tangent I was going to go into, but when you identify with that label, you unconsciously inherit this whole litany of stigma. At least I did. I think that it's true for a lot of people. And learning to disconnect from that popular opinion can be difficult. Educating myself about the condition, other conditions, all that kind of stuff, so crucial. When I first started this journey in California, my girlfriend at the time told me, don't research anything about your condition. You don't know anything about it. And I got so upset about it, even though it was true. But understanding what it is that I have going on with me, and understanding the different things that it could be, working with a therapist, expressing these things, support groups, that's so crucial. 8 months ago, the thought of sitting here talking about this stuff would terrify me. The thought of talking to the police all the times that I have talked to them would terrify me. The first time I spoke to them, terrified. Because it's well, what are they going to think? What are they going to do? And last time I spoke to them, I didn't prepare at all, because I was so comfortable with it. And then after I get the speech, I was like, oh, getting a little too comfortable with this. So it was kind of a good humbling moment. But yeah, I have one quote, and then I'll open the floor for questions, because I think that's pretty much my story in a nutshell and my experiences. External circumstances will not change until internal belief systems changed. That was said by Miles Monroe. And for me, I always look to change things externally around me. Change the way these people act. Change the way this person does this. Change that. And like I had said before, that's one heck of an undertaking to try to do that. When I change the way that I perceive things, how I react, or how I don't react to things, it's so much easier. There's things that still upset me. One of the conditions that I do have, which they're sure of, is borderline personality disorder. And that's extreme polarity, extreme reactivity to situations, all that kind of stuff. And what I like to do now, if something upsets me, is just not say anything and think about it. And then when I do that, most of the time, I'm just I guess I won, because I didn't perpetuate my own problem. Because this person who's saying whatever that I don't like, whatever I'm going to say isn't going to be the right thing to them. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, yeah, you're right. So it's I don't know. Learning that I can't change anything beyond myself is so liberating. And one final thing I'll say is learning that medication wasn't the only solution to my problem. Because when I started, I thought I could take this magic pill and everything will be great again. And our culture kind of portrays that image a lot with mental health medication. Are you depressed? Take this, and now you'll have this, but you'll get loose stools or whatever side effects they talk about. But it's a lot of work, and it's something that I have to keep doing. Not even just for me, but for people that I care about. Yeah, that's all I have. If anybody has any questions, if you don't mind, I'd like to leave it on. I can't identify you by your voice.
Fine with me.
Yeah, that's all right.
And it's only on my face, so.
Can I go first? I don't have a question. I just want to tell you, I can't believe you spent so many years in probably using like psychedelics or really strong pot, but that you have come to be 8 months sober and completely off even psych drugs and everything, and I really applaud you for that.
Thank you.
You sound so clear, and I'm sure you feel clear compared to those other times.
I do. Honestly, this is going to sound counterintuitive in lots of ways. Psychedelics and pot really kind of helped me work through some of my childhood stuff. It's just that I can continue to do them. A lot of people might not understand that, but it's just true to my experience. But yeah, I appreciate that. I do feel so much better not using that stuff. And after having been psychotic, I have no desire to use psychedelics. I like to do this analogy for that kind of stuff. It's like making a tie-dye shirt. You can only dip it so many times to get like a pretty design, and then if you keep dipping it too much, it's all going to get muddy.
Yes, so it's all going to look the same color. Mud. Well, you know what? Your talk brought up the fact that when I think I'm bipolar, and somebody did say I was once border personality disorder, and I didn't even look that up, but you said polarity, and I see it so much just in my relationship with my husband because of my traumatic past, which you definitely had a traumatic past, but I don't focus on it now. What hurt so much was that I had no tools and I had extreme fear of intimacy. Mm-hmm. So for years, even to this day, I avoid deep relationships with spouse, girlfriends. I can go days and not talk to anyone. But what was I going to say? But I see the bipolar. I just realize this because a lot of times I don't really talk. I give advice at the meeting, and I know I'm not supposed to do that. But having the nursing background, I think I know so much. But I go back and forth with my husband of, I'm not in love with you. And I do love you, or I could love you. I'm not in love with you. You're too different from me. And, I've been married 10 years, and I know that's got to be the bipolar and the lack of intimacy and knowing how to handle a deep relationship with somebody. Mm-hmm. And to really just go there and not be afraid. So that's all.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned about bipolar and borderline personality disorder is bipolar is kind of like this over months. Borderline personality is like this over years, days rather, like even like throughout a day, and it specifically relates to interpersonal relationships. Because I would either put people on a pedestal, and then once they did one thing I didn't like, oh, you're the worst person ever, or like I love you, and then they would say something, oh, they hate me, like. And it would be like that. And the thing that's supposed to help that, dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, those are all things to really look at. There's a good book for bipolar too. It's called Mindfulness for Bipolar, and it talks about sitting with your emotions and not trying to suppress them, not trying to judge them, not trying to do anything, just sitting with them, letting them come up. Being like, oh, I feel this way, kind of validating your own feelings, but not being taken away by it, and then just letting them go. Mm-hmm. That really helped me a lot.
I know I've been told to get that book before, but it is specifically Mindfulness for Bipolar.
I want to say that's the name of it, yeah. I can send Claudia a picture of it because I have it at home.
I know I should read that.
I was sharing with them when we first started that I've been in a 12-step program for 33 years.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And in my opinion, and I'm here for support, but I get more help and with people who can connect with me, know what I've been through, even though it could be a different circumstance, and all can be, still all related to one.
Mm-hmm.
And I get more help for myself being in that group than I would going anywhere, because, I mean, you can sit down and talk to a person that's never had your problem, never, been in your situation, but yet they can sit there and tell you, and I just don't agree with that. I can't help it. I'd rather be with people that know what I've gone through, know what I'm going through,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd understand. They're more help than anything, I think.
It's easier to identify with. If you have to talk to someone else about it and they don't understand what you're talking about, and if you have to try to explain it to them, that they've got usually cut and dried answers. That's what used to tick me off, that people didn't understand. Everything's cut and dried. Well, just da 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 da. And I thought,
Yeah.
I wish.
It's like a textbook answer, or whatever,
Yes.
with no lived experience.
Yes.
Right.
That was one of the great things about 12-step programs. When I came in, I thought I was terminally unique, as they call it in some of them. Nobody can understand me. And then I found out how similar my story was with lots of people, not specific instances, but like the thought process of things, where there's like women in their 60s I identify with, or like thick beer neck and punch you in the face guys that I can identify with, like all these different things that, like, I'm obviously not a 60-year-old woman or a thick neck punch you in the face kind of guy, but like it's just interesting how like similar life is, and I guess it's not to some people, but to me I was like, whoa.
We used to have a man, he was 92, believe it or not, and he said when he first started coming to our self-help group, or 12-step program, he said he thought he was weird because when all the ladies would speak, he'd be, bobbing his head and relating to them. He goes, he was scaring them. He goes, am I weird or what? But he was a good help to a lot of people. He passed away. He was a good help to a lot of people.
Was that mental health? Your 12-step group?
It's Al-Anon I belong to.
Oh, okay.
You could use a 12-step model for mental health,
Yeah.
though, if you just have to change a couple words here and there.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
And it helps you. I've had suicide in my family. My sister was 20. She took her life at Woodside Hospital the day she was off a suicide watch. So
Aw,
being part of this
that's
program I'm in, it helps you through life,
Mhm.
life experiences, because life's never going to go, it's always going to go, something. There's always going to be a bump.
Mhm.
And
when you
just
least
how
expect it.
and then how you handle those bumps, where you can go for help, who you can talk to, things like that. So
Did you have anybody guiding you? It seems like there was a higher power guiding you to get help at different parts in your life. Was your mother a resource? Was one of the hospitals a resource? Were the police a resource? Was there anyone in the establishment that geared you one way or the other?
The establishment, not so much. I mean, they just kind of just gave me medicine. They gave me stuff to do, but like, I didn't want to do any of it. My mom helped me as much as she could, but I was resistant to anybody telling me what to do.
Okay.
And near the end of it, she kind of was just exhausted of having to battle with me. So it really just kind of became, when it clicked, it clicked. There's part of one of the daily readings I read, and it was for like February 17th, and it talks about people can be beat, counseled, all this kind of stuff to try to push an agenda or an attitude onto them, but until they're ready, they're not going to take it. And that's pretty much what it was for me. It just became a matter of becoming so miserable that I was sick of how things were going, and changing everything became easier than continuing.
Like a self-preservation at that point.
Yeah, and I do think that it was like some higher power. I don't choose to call it God in the traditional sense, but yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing that like I'm nowhere near how I felt in December when I was jobless and I was in a state of depression. And I knew that no, I still had my job. I knew that if I just made a change, it would give me a boost.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And, totally different job. And it did give me a boost. And I haven't even felt those depressive feelings. And I wake up, but I'm on a lot of medication too, which is good for me, really, because I feel totally normal on my medication. I don't feel any side effects. And I never slept either as a child. And until I became an adult and I started taking something to sleep, it's like a lousy antidepressant, but it has a very sedative effect. And I always sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Probably too much, but, I sleep. And it's not good when you don't sleep because it can build up anxiety in you, and that can lead to depression.
Or with the manic, when you don't sleep, you're just
yes.
so excited about doing this and doing that.
Everything.
You just can't sit down because you think of something else. And then when you do come down,
You really hit bottom.
that's the tough part.
Yeah, that's the thing about mania is the highs, the lows are as high as the highs, where basically it's just the opposite.
And if you thought about that when you're on a high, but I guess I'm still at the acknowledgement stage. I like the highs. So until I can convince myself that I need to acknowledge a level and try to stay there instead of wait for the high and forget about what the low is going to be like coming, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you are kind of worried about the low periodically, right?
I just recently, because I've been high too long, and maybe it's not high.
Yeah, you
See,
don't
this is
seem
what I'm
that
trying to
mania.
acknowledge now.
Manic.
Where is it? Where's the balance? Maybe I'm balanced, and it's been so long since I've been highs and lows that I don't know what a balance is now.
I go through that sometimes too. It's like, how do I know that? Is this just a good day, or is it the beginning of a manic state? And then you start to panic because you don't know. So I have the same issue.
I think
I
it is
have
about
that
feeling
issue
it out.
also. I'm never sure where that balance line is. I think I'm starting to recognize some things that are indicative that I'm getting too high. My spending decisions, my sleep pattern. The condition of my apartment, because somehow when I'm manic, I think, wow, I need to take everything out and reorganize it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I get overwhelmed by the clutter and it doesn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So when I start to look at, at my environment or, what I'm spending money on or whatever, that helps me, medicate or control what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still looking for that routine. I was raised with such a routine. I threw it all away. I said, I don't want that. I don't want that. And
Well,
now I'm at a point in my life where I need,
Mm-hmm.
because of the mental issues I have, I need that. And it's convincing myself, exercise, eat right, go to bed within 2 hours,
Yeah.
not one of these 3 o'clock in the morning one night, 10
Yeah.
o'clock the next night. No, that's not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had to make little changes on a daily basis. It goes back to that philosophy of natural change. Just do it slowly. I had like one thing a week or something. This week, I'm going to do this at this time, and then slowly build. See, my structure too. It's not like I don't like structure.
Better word, structure than routine.
I don't like
either.
structure. So I have like this very nebulous structure where I have to accomplish these certain things in my bedtime. I normally step away from like video games, TV, or my phone around like 8 because that blue light disrupts your melatonin. so it makes it harder to sleep, puts you in up mode. Read, drink some tea, like some caffeine-free tea. Go to bed. I mean, if I can put a schedule in my life, you can, because working in kitchens, like, my schedule is always different.
Oh gosh, that had to be.
It
Yeah.
had to be long hours.
It depended upon which kitchen. One of the kitchens I worked at, they had a 20-tap bar too, so I'd work as long as as long as they wanted me to, because I got all the free beer I wanted.
Yeah.
Although the quality of work progressively went down.
I have just started trying to create that structure in my life. I've been hearing about needing to do that for years, but I've never been willing to do that. And I recently was at a crisis stabilization unit. You get up at 7 o'clock. You eat at a certain time. You take your meds at a certain time. And then I'm actually tired and I'm sleeping, but it's still, it's only been a couple of weeks. So it's still difficult, but I think I'm seeing some benefits to it already. And I'm hoping, I'm not eating as well. I'm not, but if I can just get that wake up, go to sleep, like you said, then in the next couple weeks, add in, setting my alarm so I take my noon meds at noon and, my afternoon meds at 4, and haven't quite accomplished that. I'm very good at taking my meds, though. I don't like some of the side effects, whatever, but I do better when I'm on the meds. Like you, I've, had some alcohol problems. Meds don't work when you drink. So I've kind of tried to put that aside, and it hasn't been that long, but it would be like you said, the pot or the alcohol helped you manage what was going on. And that's what it's always been for me. I've never been a social drinker. I've never, been out with friends, been out to a bar. It's always been at home alone to manage what I was feeling. So, in some ways, alcohol has kept me alive, but I don't like the binges, the consequence,
Oh, yeah.
It's no longer functional for me, if it ever was. And I've never used street drugs, because if I'd been in a social environment where that was available, yeah, I would have gone there. But I don't have any connections like that, but I'm also aware that should that develop, that's going to be a big problem for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me that I noticed about alcohol or any of that kind of stuff is how much more it kind of set that roller coaster and the ups and downs going. Because I would be depressed, and then I would drink, and I thought I would feel better. Then I'd wake up the next day, and I'd feel worse.
Right. And then you have whatever happened to you when you were drinking.
Yeah, I'd have to call everybody within like a 20-mile radius and see who I did what to. Because I have this, like sense of shame that I don't want to replace.
Oh yeah, the shame and the remorse, and and I can't believe I did this to my family again. And but I've just started going to Al-Anon. And I feel like I'm kind of at the same starting point now. I didn't find that in another 12-step group. I just never felt safe and never felt connected. And I've only been to 2 of these Al-Anon meetings, but how they talk about AA, you finally, feel like you've come home and you've found your people. I'm kind of starting to feel that about Al-Anon.
So, Ross, if I may ask you,
Yes, sir.
I imagine your support system right now is rather small.
Honestly, any support group I go, any 12-step group I go to, I have a support group, so it's
But I mean,
it's
what
global.
about friends, family?
My family all gets it. I don't really have many friends locally, but any support group I go to anywhere, people understand me. So I just got back from being in Sedona, Arizona. I went to a meeting out there, and it was like talking with friends. So I have a global network of people that get me.
Because the same answer isn't right for everybody. And, I could do one thing that worked for somebody and it doesn't work for me. And people get frustrated because they say, this is the answer, this is the answer, this is the answer.
Mhm.
And it might have been for them and it might be for the majority of people. But it's not right for me, it doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when that view is the dominant view, you're really struck with, a weight of evidence says this should work, and it doesn't. And, you just have to keep looking and listening, what helped you. I'm kind of jealous you're getting along without medication. But I know that's not my route. I know if I go off medication, I will be hospitalized very quickly or in trouble somewhere or, something really bad's going to happen. So I'm glad that worked for you, but it's not my path.
Mm-hmm.
And, AA was helpful for you. It's not my path. And that one's really difficult because that is the dominant,
I actually
the
don't go to
dominant
AA. I
path.
had to go to a different 12-step
Okay.
program.
Yeah.
They all have good merits and disadvantages, though.
Mhm.
But yeah.
And-
But again, you
Yeah.
got to find one that matches you
Mm-hmm.
because, like you said, it has to be for you, not for
Right.
everybody.
Exactly.
But you also, not you, I
Mhm.
also have to get to the point where I trust myself.
Right.
I trust myself to say
Mhm.
that this
Right.
is not for me.
Right.
I might have to go this way, I might have to go that way, but what you're talking about is not for me. And that
Right.
takes a long time to get there when you can trust your own gut. After you've been slammed so many times for not doing the right thing at the right time and
Mhm.
not understanding your illness and not understanding this. And it's just,
Right.
okay, I like me. I want to be, as long as I'm not hurting anyone, or
Mhm.
this is the person I want to be, and not question it. Then you can get the medication or not the medication or this
Yeah.
or that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. For me, I'm 65 years old. It's taken me that long to like
realize.
me and know that what some people say to me is not right.
Mhm.
It's not good for me.
And to have no shame. For years,
Oh yeah.
I just longed to
Oh, yeah.
not be on medication and be like other people.
Well, the question is, where did it come
And
from?
now,
Well, I don't know where it came from.
after my last hospitalization, there's no way I ever want to go back there. Oh,
Oh yeah, we each have our own.
it was awful.
And learning how to be honest too. I mean, I had to set my group and admit that I was married to a person that drank or drinks every day, but in our younger years, I was the aggressive one.
Mhm.
I mean, I had so much pain that, he had long hair, so I'd pull his hair and scratch him because
That's regular.
that's how I inflicted.
That's how you could do
That's
something.
how
Yeah, you could do a
expressed
whole
your
lot.
anger.
That's in my pain. And
Mhm.
but then I started, if I'd get up and see a scratch on his arm, I'd say, "Oh my God, did I do that? Was I acting like that?" And when you're sitting there telling people things like this, you're afraid, oh, everybody's going to judge you and everything, but nobody judges you. That's what I try to explain to her in a group meeting. People don't judge you.
That's
go around
what we
tell
used
their
to say at
experience.
the beginning of each meeting. You leave here with no judgments and with no
Mhm.
shame.
one of the things I really had to learn to get more comfortable with me too is other people's perception of me is not a reflection of me; it's a reflection of them.
That's what I tried to say.
And that's so crucial, because then I don't have to take ownership of other people's opinions of me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's so much more freeing. I wanted to go back to the one thing that you had said about identifying different things. That's one of the things that's awesome. That's really when things started to change for me, is identifying when certain things started to go a certain way, that I needed to step back or do something differently, and that like having a schedule kind of allows me to do that more so, because when I start getting off schedule, why is this happening? What do I need to do here? I shouldn't, maybe structure, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I know
When
what
certain
you
things
mean,
start
though.
falling by the wayside. So that really is a good sign. And I definitely, too, vibe with finding your own way, because there isn't like a manual where I picked it up and it's like, this is Ross's road to recovery from everything.
Yeah.
I had to like try a bunch of stuff that other people said, try my own things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the stuff that I didn't want to try, that I didn't think would work, worked. And some of the stuff that I did think would work, didn't work. It's just a matter of like, for me, finding that balance. And this may sound foolish to some people. I think some people here will get it though too. When something feels right, it's right. When something feels wrong, it's wrong. But before, I'd be like, well, this isn't going to work out good, but then I'd do it anyhow, or like push through something like, this feels totally off. I'm going to, but it might work out differently. And then like, I end up in a police cruiser or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, after so many people say, well, how do you handle your mental illness? Then you start wondering if your gut will ever work again. But it does. Your gut works again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you always trust your gut, regardless.
It talks to you.
Yeah, my mind tells me stupid things sometimes.
Yeah.
My gut's normally pretty spot on.
That we have a lot in common. Your mind telling you a lot of stupid things. We have a lot in common in that area, so.
And the more time you have on your hands, you get into your head, and you need to get out of your head. If you're just dwelling on negative things. I think a little bit of structure. I think everybody needs a little bit of structure. And meds don't work if you're taking them at different times of the day.
Mhm.
I've done that, and the doctors told me so many times, it doesn't work.
Yeah, 6, 4, and 10. That's probably the only structure I do have. And a
Yeah.
lot of them are like vitamins and biotin and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But 6, 4, and 10, I can do that. So maybe next week I can try something else.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm good at morning and evening, but now I have ones in the daytime, and I'm not good at those.
Oh, I put them in my pocket. I put them in my
I have
pocket
one
in
of
the
those
morning.
med sets that has noon and evening, but
But I don't like to
I've
take
only
it.
been working at it for about a week. So
Maybe
I
do
think
something
I'll-
you like to do when you go to do it too. And that way you kind of like reward yourself when you do it.
Oh, that's a good idea.